Hello and welcome to the Green 19 podcast. I'm Dominique Yates. I'm joined by Ryan Wood and Tom Silverstein as we can officially put a ribbon on the 2025 NFL Draft here in Green Bay, Wisconsin. What a week it was. An announced 600,000 people in attendance over 3 days. It's pretty remarkable to think about. And I mean, there was just great energy and atmosphere, and we can talk all about not only that, just the event in itself, as the Packers had 8 draft picks. Now we have an idea of what at least they were envisioning leading up to the draft, and I guess their thoughts moving forward. And we can just kind of talk through some things, and not only that, but comments from head coach Matt LaFleur, general manager Brian Gutekunst. I'll start with you, Spoon. Just today you were able to see the stage. Just what were your thoughts just on the draft and just the experience here in Green Bay, Wisconsin?
I thought it was, it looked like a place where a lot of people were having fun. And, that's the plus side of it. I'm usually pretty skeptical of anything the NFL does because it's all about money and greed and, whatever they can do to promote their self, and spread their influence everywhere. But, I think the Wisconsin people took it over and did it right, did it like a party, which is how it should be.
Wait, you're skeptical, Spoon? No. No.
I mean, let's think about it. This isn't even a game, I mean, it's a freaking draft, it's a shuffling of paper.
You know what it is? It's a festival. I mean, this is like any festival that you go to, right? I mean, it might be not like any festival back to, it's not Woodstock, okay? But it's basically a festival of people. It's a celebration. And then, oh, by the way, the backdrop is that Roger Goodell or whatever celebrity, they had Steve Irwin's kid read off a pick. Whatever person they find is going to read a card, and then you just go right back to the party. I don't know how many people even stop to listen to the card, certainly on Saturday, day 3. It's a festival. It's a party with a little draft thrown in the background. That was my impression from being here.
Yeah, I mean, that's all it was, and I guess if it benefited Green Bay, great, we got some people some work, and but, look, I'm going to keep it at what it was. I only get excited about the game of football, and the draft stuff is fun, but it's not. I mean, in a week we're not even going to be thinking about these guys really. I guess we'll go to a rookie minicamp and watch them, but all the attention will be on the other guys after this. I will say one thing though. This draft might produce some guys who have to play right away or force themselves to play right away. I thought this would be a draft where there'd be a lot of guys who just don't play because, there's a pretty not a veteran team, but it's a team with a lot of pieces in place. And, the way it panned out, there could be 2 or 3 significant players out of it.
Yeah, that was something that really caught my attention. But I guess for me, as far as the draft as a whole, I just didn't know what to expect. I wasn't sure how it'd be put together. So it was impressive just to see how it seemed like everything went fairly smoothly over the past few days. But
well, I'll tell you this, okay? If skeptical's on brand for Spoon, I'm here for the party, right? That's my bring me the party. I had a blast, and I have to say, I was firmly in the camp when this was announced 2 years ago. It's coming to Green Bay. I thought there's no way in hell this is going to go okay. Like, this is not this city of 107,000 people. Not when there's a projected 250,000 people. 600,000 is the number. I don't know, because I counted as 3 people, right? I mean, it's not. I don't know if it's exactly 600,000 different people, not unique visitors here, to use some journalism lingo for you, but it was more than 250,000 people. Like, it overshot expectations, projections, and not by a little. Just day 1 was massive. I thought there was no chance that they'd pull this off. I've never been more happy to be more wrong. I was dead wrong. The city of Green Bay handled this exceptionally well. I'm sure that there was some moments of chaos and confusion. It's a massive event. It's hard to know where to go all the time. My phone didn't work. Anytime I left Lambeau Field, I didn't get reception. I wasn't able to tweet. There was those issues. But in terms of crowd control, in terms of bringing this many people into such a confined space, I don't think it could have possibly gone better. It went way better than I expected. Mm-hmm. And just from the sheer fun, like Spoon said, the sheer party of it all, it was a hell of a time. I mean, I'll say this. It's going to... The NFL has now shown that it can take this event to literally anywhere, any of its cities in the league. If it can do it in Green Bay, you can do it in Buffalo, you can do it in Pittsburgh. It's not a place you can't do it. So it's going to cycle through as it should. Every city should get a chance to kind of grab a piece of this. But this, in the long arc of time, this should not have been the last time it comes to Green Bay. Just my opinion. Green Bay showed that it can host this event, host it well. And it was a heck of a time for everyone here.
That really
stood
out.
Mr. Chamber of Commerce. Now let's go to football.
Hey, I took 2 years. I took 2 years crapping all over the idea that this was possible.
All right.
I need to eat crow.
Spoon's ready to talk football, but let's jump into it though. Let's look at the picks, and obviously we have the full draft class on our website, so you can go find that there if you need be. But we can just have the list of names. Obviously, it started with Matthew Golden, and then it went to Anthony Belton, and then we have Savion Williams, a wide receiver. Baron Sorrell, a guy we'll definitely be talking about in a few minutes. Colin Oliver, Warren Brinson, Michael Robinson, John Williams, and that was the final one that wrapped up the 8 picks. So I'll just start with you, Spoon. Just when you saw the picks and everything kind of come together now throughout this final day, I don't know, what do you make? What were your impressions of it?
I think the only guys that really matter as of right now are the first 3 guys.
Right.
Those are 3 guys who have a chance to play. The edge rusher guys, they're not classic guys who, come in with awesome sack statistics or anything like that. And it's hard. It's hard for defensive linemen to have an impact as rookies. Probably the hardest position there is. So I think, Golden is I'd be surprised if he has trouble adjusting to the pro game. I think he's played at the highest level. Receivers, it's a hard position too for rookies, but he seems to be an intelligent guy. Bolton, he's just going to play. I mean, unless he's just a total flop as a pass blocker, I think they're going to find a place for him. Mm-hmm. They need to be that type of player. They need more of those guys, I think, because we saw what happened against Philadelphia, Minnesota, and Detroit at the end of the season. They were just worn out. And then lastly, Savion Williams is going to be a wild card. He'll be really interesting to see what they can do with him. I mean, doesn't catch the ball that well, but there's a lot of ways he can get the ball in his hand. And LaFleur looked like he was just in heaven about him. I think he wanted to talk about him the entire press conference.
Yeah. Ryan, what do you make of the draft?
Every draft has a stretch that really defines it for a class, because the reality is, for all the focus that's made on the draft pick and what the team does when they're on the clock, most of the draft is waiting. It's waiting for 31 other NFL GMs to make their move. It's a completely unpredictable science because you don't know what's going to happen in front of you. I think the stretch that defined this draft was Friday night. If you look at the 10 picks before the Packers had their first selection in the second round, 54 overall, 4 edge rushers were taken, and I think 2 corners in that time. If you look at between 54 and 87, 4 more edge rushers were taken in that gap. Okay? So if you were going to bed Friday night wondering, well, goodness, the shock of this draft is that they didn't draft a pass rusher in the first 3 rounds. Where's the pass rush? The pass rush was off the board before they had a chance to pick at 54 and 87. What Brian Gutekunst did was he stood to his board and he took the best player available, which was Anthony Bolton, and it was Savion Williams. And they fit needs. It was not the biggest need, The biggest need in this draft was pass rush, but it fit a need. And if it goes according to their plan, they got a lot of talent there because they feel like they took the best player available. So we'll see. Any draft, you never know instantly what it's going to be. We got to see these guys play. It's going to take a couple years. The jury might still be out on Lucas Van Ness from 2023. It's a big year coming up for him, first-round pick. So we don't know that, but it sure looks like Friday night really defined this draft. And I think the biggest benefactor at the end of this thing was the quarterback. Jordan Love's the biggest winner from this draft. The Packers managed to add playmaking and protection around Jordan Love. They got bigger on the offensive line, not just with Anthony Bolton, but look at Aaron Banks. He's 6'5", 325. They brought in this spring, they brought in 2 massive blockers, which is really important when Josh Jacobs is your running back, and you have your identity on offense is a power run scheme. Those guys can operate, Aaron Banks and Anthony Bolton, in a power run scheme. So they were able to do that. I think the X factor is they need one of those pass rushers early day 3, whether that be Warren Brinson in the 6th round, Oliver in the 5th, or Sawyer in the 4th. They need one of those guys to stick. If one of those guys can stick, which is really, that'd be doing well for them because they're day 3 picks, that to me is the X factor.
Spoon, was there anything that surprised you at all about how they went about the process? You say with these draft picks, did anything maybe stand out at all or not so much?
No, I think they were. I think they won by being patient in the first round, and I think they're universally and by some pretty impressive people who know football seem to be really high on Matthew Golden, and seem to it's almost like he dropped into their lap, and they weren't dumb enough to move out of there. And they thought about it, and you have to give them credit that they thought and then decided, no, this guy can probably help us. I have thought that, pass rush was a need, but I really thought that their offense needed some sort of jolt.
Yes.
It just was not good enough last year. It wasn't in the caliber of some of the offenses we've seen with LaFleur. And even with the addition of Josh Jacobs, it just was not explosive in any way, shape, or form. And, part of that was not having Aaron Jones. He was the explosive guy. And none of their receivers turned into explosive guys other than Christian Watson when he was on the field. And now they got another explosive guy, and Savion Williams has a chance to be a guy who can, chew up 8-10 yards on some plays. So I felt like they needed help on offense, and I think they at least made a move towards it. I think they could do more. I mean, I think if there's a free agent wide receiver too, a veteran guy who, a big guy, they could use like some size at that position. I would do that too. I don't stop. You might as well get as much competition and as much talent as you can.
I think the Packers agreed with you, Spoon. I think, and I want to preface this by saying Brian Gutekunst was really, I thought, revealing Friday night when he comes in after the second and third round, and he said multiple times, he reminded multiple times, look, it is at the end of the day taking the best player available while you are on the clock. It is not a mandate. It is not a sweeping statement. It's not an indictment of anyone. It is just take the best player. That's drafting, okay? So just because they went offense in the first 3 rounds doesn't necessarily mean they came into this draft saying, Got to go offense here. You got to do no. If best player available was defensive end, edge, corner, they would have gone there when they were on the clock. But you also can't deny the last time Brian Gutekunst saw his team play, the offense got shellacked. It was not even close to going into Philadelphia and standing up to that defense.
And it got shellacked in Minnesota.
Yeah.
And it got shellacked in Detroit.
Yeah.
Where they couldn't protect.
Late in the season.
And they're playing, these big physical teams, and they're getting beat, at the line of scrimmage.
That was the stretch run, right? I mean, that's the lasting impression going into this April draft. And lasting impressions last. So I do think that it's fair to say they really thought the offense needed better. They have a young quarterback who's still developing. Jordan Love is entering a massive year for himself in his development. Year 3 as a starter.
Needs help.
He's shown some very promising signs in the first 2 years, led him to back-to-back playoffs, but he still needs to take a jump. He still needs to take a leap in this third year. You got a guy in that phase of his development, you have to help him. You have to continue helping him, and they did that. So but while it is best player available, there are reasons why they went that route as well. And I think at the end of the day, you're helping your quarterback, and you're helping this offense. That's not a bad thing. They didn't lose because of the defense last year. And I wrote about this today, Spoon. They were tied for 8th for all the concern about the pass rush. They were tied for 8th during the regular season with 45 sacks. I asked Matt LaFleur after the end of the draft today. He said many times, that they went in last season with a vision for how they wanted to play defense. They wanted to rush predominantly with 4, drop 7 in coverage. They changed that because they couldn't get it done. I asked if he felt like they had the horses to do that now, and he said, I don't necessarily want to go back to the initial vision.
Yeah, I thought that was pretty interesting.
That was very revelatory to me. What this pass rush is going to be, which is a big question going out of this draft, is what you saw last year. They're not going to scrap, even if it was kind of a happy accident, they're not going to scrap the creative blitz schemes, the simulated pressures that worked for them last year, that allowed them to be tied for 8th with 45 sacks, that got to Jalen Hurts twice in the playoffs, hit him 5 times, which is more than any other team in the playoffs hit Jalen Hurts, other than the Rams. They got after quarterbacks the way they did it. They're not going to go back because they have Edgerrin Cooper, they have Quay Walker. Jeff Hafley has shown that he can use DBs in the blitz scheme. Keyshawn Nixon had a career-high 3 sacks last year. Xavier McKinney had a critical 3rd down sack against C.J. Stroud. They are by committee. They're going to be by committee. I think that's why Brian Gutekunst has said it from the owners' meeting all throughout the offseason. He did not feel like it was a mandate to bring in pass rushers because it's not just going to be the defensive front.
I think that sounds good, and it's probably something they are going to go into the season doing. It sounds very definitely like that's what they're going to do. But if they don't have the corners to do it, to blitz like that, you got to have some guys who can hold up in man coverage, and they have, they have, I guess, a sufficient number for starting. They've got Keyshawn Nixon. Bullard's probably going to be the slot, and Hobbs is going to be the outside guy, and then Carrington Valentine will work however they use him. They have to hope Hobbs stays healthy. He's not stayed healthy throughout his career. He's missed games. Having Valentine, that helps. But they just can't have, multiple. That's what would scare me if I'm Gutekunst. I'd be like, if multiple injuries happen at corner, then I would start to get kind of nervous.
That's true.
I was very surprised that they didn't take a pass rusher in the first 3 rounds. Hearing Matt LaFleur, I'm less surprised because I understand the vision. I still think it's a risk because there's a reason why teams in this league, defenses want to rush for 4 and drop 7. That's the ideal preferred blueprint, but they showed last year they can get that done. What I'm not surprised by, and I've been saying all spring, I'm not surprised that they really didn't target a corner until, the 6th round. I think what this, and I thought this going into the draft, what this cornerback position needs is a Corey Ballantyne. They need that 5th corner that can be plugged in an emergency and give you solid play in a week or 2. I don't see that if injuries hit. I think that's the concern. Maybe they hope to, from either the 6th round pick today or Kalen King, one of those guys can be that Corey Ballantyne.
I think they'll be on the hunt for some veterans
someone
too.
Yeah, they need to find someone to fill that role. But watching last year, the combination of Jeff Hafley's coaching, he's a lifelong BB coach, and it was a massive difference with the same group as Joe Barry in 2023. Same guys. They played much better. And the elite safety play that they have, which helps the corners, that combination, corners were never a reason why they lost games, why they couldn't make a deep playoff run. It wasn't that. It was, to Spoon's point, it was the offense. That was really the reason why they had a premature exit in the postseason. So I'm not surprised it didn't significantly address corner. Was surprised with the pass rush, but that's just what they're going to do. They're going to be by committee.
Which is why offensively I'm very interested to see what it looks like in terms of, they talked about that competition. But what is that going to look like in training camp? Because obviously they didn't say this, but for me, I looked at these draft picks, especially at wide receiver. A message is being sent. If you have 10, 11, 12 drops in a season, they're going to try to find someone that can catch the ball. If you ditch practice because you're not getting enough targets, they're going to have someone in there that can go in there and play and just do what they can. So I'm very interested what that competition is going to look like between especially the wide receivers, because, you fill the holes at running back. You're still working with Jordan Love. The offensive line, they're trying to beef that up. But it's that wide receiver group that it's almost like a fly on the wall. Or maybe you see like what their group text would look like right now. It would be very interesting just to see what that competition and just how intense it could be. Do you think Spoon, it could be a little intense?
It needs to be.
Yeah.
It needs to be. That's part of the reason they did it. They cannot have what happened last year happen. They can't have, 30 plus drops in a season. It's just doesn't work. And their guys underperformed. Now, Jordan Love underperformed too, maybe because he was hurt. But you need receivers to bail you out, your quarterback. I mean, there's opportunities for them to do stuff, Love's throws were behind them often. They weren't always on target. But you need a good receiver to bail you out of those kind of things. And so it wasn't good enough, and I give him credit for addressing it.
Yeah.
Just because the goal when you're on the clock is taking best player available doesn't mean that when you do that, there isn't also a message being sent, right? There's ramifications from taking best player available. And I do think that if you're a receiver that was on this roster last season and you saw this draft, your eyebrows went up in the first 2 days. It got your attention. And when you look at the top 8 pass catchers in this offense now, we're talking Christian Watson, Romeo Doubs, Jaden Reed, Dontavian Wicks, Matthew Golden, Savion Williams, Tucker Kraft, Luke Musgrave. Those guys, all those guys have come since 2022. We're talking about a first-round pick, 3 second-round picks, 2 third-round picks, a 4th and a 5th-round pick. That is a lot. Capital L-O-T, all caps. That's a lot of investment into pass catchers, which when you have a new quarterback is probably a good idea, so there's going to be a ton of competition there. That's a lot of premium ammunition that they've used to build that group. Now they're on the depth chart. They're going to be on the practice field come training camp. They're going to be competing for jobs, and ideally, if you're them, you hope that 3 guys from the receiver group stand out and become your 3 when you're in 11 personnel. You expect Tucker Kraft to maybe be potentially your leading receiver, take another jump because he's got that kind of talent. Luke Musgrave, if he can stay healthy, has shown that he has potential. You've got options there. You got contingencies if some of these guys don't pan out.
Going to some comments from Matt LaFleur, Ryan mentioned something that kind of caught his attention was his comment about the pass rush. Was there anything that you heard from him or maybe good against that kind of caught your eye or that you found interesting?
Well, just the stuff about Savion Williams, that he kept coming back to that and kept talking about all the different things he can do and how he runs over people. And I think the wheels were turning in his head. If you have a physical line, which they hope they do, and then you got a physical runner like Josh Jacobs, and then you had another physical runner like Savion Williams, you're now an NFC North team. You're a Green Bay old school team. And I think that says something for them. They need to play well at home. They need to win every game at home. They need to take care of whatever bad weather games there are. And I think when you have power guys like that, that's kind of what Philadelphia did. They became bullies on both sides of the ball. And the Packers, I think, are reacting to that.
Tucker Kraft, physical runner as well. The other thing Philadelphia did is that they were bullies on offense, that offensive line, but they also had that huge play element in Saquon Barkley, right? Mm-hmm. So now you have all these physical guys, and you also have 4-2-9. They added that element, which was going to be missing the first half of the season with Christian Watson coming back from the torn ACL. They were going into the season not having that for 2 months. Now they have 4-2-9. So you got to have a blend of both, and they've at least created the opportunity for them to have that balance of physicality and 4-2-9.
Yeah. I do want to bring up this, the story, if you will. I think this was one of the moments of the NFL draft that not only took the world by storm, but it was one of the cooler stories, and it was from the Packers with Baron Sorrell. And just the fact that they said he paid out of pocket to come to Green Bay just to attend the draft and just kind of check it all out himself, met Commissioner Goodell, and wasn't even drafted at that point, but he stayed in town, hung out, and on this Saturday, he gets drafted by the hometown team. Then he goes into the press conference and he, talks about his family and gets overcome with emotions. And, I always say, obviously, I'm not a fan of the Packers. I'm just a human being. And I saw it. I was ready to call my parents and let them know that I love them because it was a very touching moment watching Mr. Sorrell out there. Just for you, I guess, what was it like to just see these type of stories? I know you've been around this game a long time, but where does that kind of stand up? Not, you're still a young man, of course, but just to see some unique story like that, have you seen many instances and something like that kind of happening?
Well, you don't see it publicly as much. Everybody has a family, and you see them on draft day. They're all surrounded by their family, and it's a great deal. But I thought he was really sincere, and you could tell that his family was pretty sincere, and you can tell. This kid has some brains. I don't know. He just seemed to have it together, and it was a good moment. It was one of those things where you like to see that he has all this support system that someone has, because not everybody has that kind of a support system, and he does. And whether football ends up being, his trade for a decade, or if it's only a year or two, he's got this good support system. And of course, his brother can support him since he's a banker for Goldman Sachs in New York or whatever he said he was. Yeah. So anyway,
it was really cool, though. Absolutely.
I got two historical questions for you, Spoon. Can you remember ever seeing the commissioner come out day 3 to announce a draft pick of a guy who was at the draft?
Yeah, I don't pay attention to that much. Mm-hmm. I don't remember whether Goodell's ever come out for a pick. I don't know if he did it because it was Green Bay or because he was in, Barron was in the lone guy sitting in the green room. Yeah. I'm not sure. Did anyone ask him, or did we hear why he did that, Goodell?
No, but I thought it was a good moment for Roger Goodell, and I can't remember ever seeing that. I'm not saying it hasn't. I'm sure it's probably happened at some point. I'm sure this isn't the only time, but I can't remember seeing it. It is rare for that to happen. So I thought it was a good moment for Roger Goodell to come out there. It was funny hearing from Brian Gutekunst and Matt LaFleur. Baron Sorrell's name was on the list of attendees, but they had forgotten, especially by day 3, that he was still here. So they see Roger Goodell come out, and they're like, okay, he's just going to announce who's picking, who's announcing this pick. And then it says Baron Sorrell. He announces it himself. They're like, oh, he's here. So, Jeff Hafley was able to meet today with Baron Sorrell. Brian Gutekunst said he wasn't able to, but he enjoyed watching it on television. I thought it was a good moment. But also, what was, for me, interesting it was the first time, I've been on the beat since 2014, it was the first time, including Matthew Golden, who was here Thursday night, did not come to the media auditorium. The first time a Packers draft pick has ever immediately come to the media since I've been on the beat. Mm-hmm. When is the last time that has happened? Do you remember the last time?
Well, the way it used to be is they'd have the first couple rounds on the first day, and they'd get the first round pick, and then he would fly in and be there the next day. And they'd do like a presser on that Saturday or Friday, or it wasn't a 3-day event back then, it was like a 2-day event. So it would be Friday, I don't know how many rounds they'd do, but then they'd fly the first round pick in the next day and do a press conference for him. So that's, I don't remember that it was ever on, the same day, because how could it? It's always been at night that I recall. It'd be really hard unless the guy was from Wisconsin.
When did they stop? They stopped doing that before 2014, flying them in the next day. They stopped because they haven't done that since then. Do you know when that stopped?
I don't. Like, I remember Clay Matthews and BJ Raji, but although that wasn't the next day, I think they brought them in during the rookie camp, right? Like, I think, were you there for that? No,
it was 2009. That's 5 years before me.
I can remember A.J. Hawk being there. I don't remember if that was right away.
A.J. Hawk's the one that stands out to me because there's that very famous photo of Ted Thompson and A.J. Hawk together.
Yeah.
I remember seeing that. I wasn't here for that either. That was 2006. But that one I know happened, and I've heard about Clay Matthews and B.J. Raji in 2009.
They did it together. They were up on the stand together. So... and Aaron Rodgers, I don't remember. I should go through my files because I have all the stories that I did from back then, and I'd be able to tell whether they were there or not.
The reason I ask because that was a really powerful moment. To Spoon's point, this is the sort of thing that happens in every living room throughout the country when a player gets drafted. It is a sweet and powerful moment with their families. It is. My son was here for the draft and kind of explaining to him, and the thing I said is every time you hear a name, that's the culmination of a lifelong dream. Every single one. That's what the draft is, right? I mean, it's reading of cards, it's a part, but that's for these guys. That's what that is. And oftentimes, when that dream is realized, we don't see it. Right, you might see it on TV sometimes, but we're not there in the room. Mm-hmm. It was very powerful to see that all unfold in real time. And as Baron Sorrell was introducing his family, he completely broke down, and it was the most raw and real human moment.
He tried everything to hold it in, too.
Right? To watch that, it gave me chills. It was a really, really cool moment. The point is, there's something, we'll meet the rest of the rookies in a week, rookie minicamp. There is something to what they used to do, which is bring these guys in immediately and actually have that face-to-face interaction. It really hammered home. And for me, it's my 11th draft now. You get used to, okay, what are the measurables on this guy? How fast did they run? How might they fit in the scheme on the depth chart? What's the competition creator? You get lost in that. You can forget, it's a human moment. It's a culmination of a lifelong dream, and I don't think it should be forgotten.
A guy, who lived a dream, who got to have a moment with his parents and his godparents and his agent. So it was cool, and I just wanted to bring it up because, sometimes you can get caught up in, sometimes you can say almost a negative. Like some people, you might ask them what will they remember about the draft? It'll be Shedeur Sanders, da-da-da. I'm like, if you ask me, I'm going to say this guy. Baron Sorrell, who wasn't even expected to be here. The Packers didn't know he was here. He was drafted in this city. The videos they put out with the crowd behind him, and he said, "Go Pack, go." Unlike Matthew Golden, he did get the "Go Pack, go" right. Not 1, 2, 3 Green Bay. But just to be able to have those type of moments, and like you said, we were there, not just watching it on TV. You saw just a genuine, raw emotion. It was just something that I'll remember, and that'll be my takeaway from the 2025 NFL Draft. So as we wrap it up, Spoon, and then we'll go with you, Ryan. Just any closing words, final thoughts as we prepare for the next step into off season?
I always find it interesting to see what the guys look like, after you pretty much have just looked at the numbers and watched the highlights and stuff, and get to meet them in the locker room and get the bummer part about it is that you don't really get to see them do anything until training camp. The mini camp, you get to see them run around. We'll get to see Golden, I'm sure, at the mini camp, and then maybe one OTA or two OTAs where, you get to see him run around. But it's all very anticlimactic from here. And, the focus turns onto the team, the guys who are here now. So, it was an eventful draft. And if Gutekunst is right, if this turns out to be a good draft, it's got a chance to be the one that helps push him over, because this is about the third straight. He's had 2 really good drafts in a row, and almost 3. He's pushed a lot of pretty good talent onto the roster, and if this one ends up being really good, then he's starting to have the makeups for a special team. That's the big question: is how many of those guys are going to really take that step that they have been projected to take.
Yeah, everyone wants the instant analysis from the draft, right? As soon as it's done, you see grades. It's buffoonery, but it's what everyone wants. My instant analysis of a draft, any draft, is always on strategy. It's always on the draft management. Was there an approach here? How do they strategize the management of the draft? Because we have no idea if these guys can play. So there's no sense in saying this is a good or bad draft. But from a strategic standpoint, I thought they managed this draft very well. I think what they were able to do, specifically showing patience and being committed to their board, which it was very clear that they were, is what you have to do in a draft. When there's unpredictability, you cannot panic. And I didn't sense any panic here. I think they stuck to the board, took the best player available. If these guys can play, then they did a lot of things to help the roster, but these guys need to be able to play. That's the element we just don't know.
Yeah, so for all things on this Packers 2025 NFL Draft, you can go on Packers News, you can go on Journal Sentinel. So much information on there, and of course we'll have this podcast up. So there's still so much more that we can talk about throughout this offseason when we get into rookie minicamps, OTAs, and so much more. But this is another step heading into the 2025 NFL season, and we at least have an idea of some of the newcomers that will be in Green Bay with the Packers. So we thank you all for checking out the Green 19 podcast. For Ryan Wood, Tom Silverstein, I'm Dominique Yates.